Welcome back. We are glad you are still with us. Remember, you can always interact with us. Talk to us using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. We'd love to know where you're watching us from. As of course, we do wish the candidates who are sitting for their exams today, that is the KCPE candidates, an estimated 1,191,725 candidates, as per the ministry, will be starting their exams in about 2 minutes. The estimated time was set at 8:30 a.m. today. So as and when they do start, we wish them the absolute best. Of course, concerns have been aired by so many people on the value chain, the education system value chain, issues to do with the safety of our learners. Impersonation is also something that has come out quite strongly from that conversation that Regina did have there, and also issues to do with cheating. And actually, looking at one of the dailies this morning, CS for Education was key to point out that some, particularly one school in Kisii has been known to be headquarters of cheating, and this is the, let me see, he singled out Isebania, Migori and Kisii as the headquarters for cheating, and this is the history that has been seen when it comes to national exams. So as our students continue on with their exams this morning, we do wish them the best, and feel free to share with us your thoughts and your wishes as well to those who that you may know will be sitting their exams as of today. Once again, the hashtag you can use is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Do remember to tag at KBC Channel 1, at Jane Wamboy, and at Rain Manyara, so we can be able to see all your feed in regards to what these conversations that we are having with you this morning, as well as from where you are watching us today. Now we want to switch gears and move on to matters conversation revolving around security, and more specifically private security here in our country. In the recent time, we have been seeing a rather higher uptake when it comes to private security. But what has been informing this decision that most people are gravitating towards when it comes to private security? Joining us this morning to help with this conversation, and of course, if you are a stakeholder in this, in line with this conversation, we welcome you to share with us your thoughts. In studio this morning, to my immediate left, we have Cosmas Mutava, who is the chair of the Protective Security Industry Association. Good morning, Mr. Cosmas.
Good morning, Jen, and good morning, viewers.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Now, on the other extreme side of studio, to my extreme left, we also have Jacob Atiang, who is the programs manager at Usalama Reforms Forum. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
All right, thank you for being with us this morning. Now, before we get deeper into this conversation, let me start with you, Cosmas. Just your general overview when it comes to the state of private security in our country. How are we doing?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, viewers. As you have heard, my name is Cosmas Mutava. In terms of security, I'm the chairman, Protective Security Industry Association, an association which takes about 150 security firms,
yes,
who are employing about 700,000 security guards in the country. I must say that security is good. For the time being, we remember sometimes back we had so many issues revolving security. Now security, and more so private security, has normalized. Somehow it's not like those days. That's what I can say. All
right. And let's getting to your particular association, the Protective Security Industry Association. I know you've touched on some of the things that you do, but for the benefit of our viewers this morning who are watching us and they are hearing maybe of the association for the first time, what really is your mandate and your responsibility in the private security sector? Let
me say that Protective Security Industry Association was registered in the year 2004. And the objective is to become the voice of private security providers in the country.
Yes.
We have been doing that. Remember those days we did not have a regulator.
Yes.
And I must say that 12 years down the line, that is in 2016, an authority was formed, that is Private Security Regulatory Authority, which was formed in 2016 with an aim of regulating the industry. And that is to say that we are moving in the right direction. Protective Security Industry Association has been playing its role as an association. Jane, remember there are so many other associations in the country.
Yes.
Actually, I may say that there are about 20 other associations. That is to say that there is KISIA, there is PROSAC, there is WISE, that is Women in Security, and I urge you to join any of that. Yeah, that is Women in Security or Protective Security Industry Association, so that we can speak with one voice.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now, let me come to you, Jacob, and maybe we can start by understanding what Usalama Reforms Forum is all about.
Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you very much, viewers. Usalama Reforms Forum is a civil society organization that is working on monitoring security sector reforms program. As you are aware, in our 2010 constitution, there are a lot of reform programs that the constitution by itself envisaged.
Yes.
So Usalama Reforms Forum has been and continues to be working in security sector reforms. We have worked in police reforms program since 2011, and we are now, in addition to working police reforms program, focusing on security sector reforms program with a lot of research and governance programs that go into the details of the security sector reforms program that are ongoing in Kenya today. And we are focusing on private security, as Cosmas has said, that, you know, we are aware that security is a national function, and that's why it is the core mandate of the national government. But in addition to the National Police Service that is charged with the responsibility of, you know, providing homeland security, you have the private security industry coming in to supplement that function that the National Police Service is established to do. So you have quite a big industry that is coming up that for a long time has not been regulated up to 2016, but we are now getting into a conversation with the regulation in place to begin a national conversation to reorganize the sector and professionalize the sector and have the sector taken as a very important integral part that complements the work of national security agencies.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to understand, you know, your personal opinion when it comes to the state of private security as is in the current market space that we are in, compared to the previous times before the regulation came into play.
Yeah, the regulations came into place in 2016, I think around July.
June. Yes.
Before then, this was an industry that was unregulated, that was nearly self-regulating, but with a lot of challenges, as Cosmas has alluded to. So you had a growing industry without regulations, without rules, without quite a bit of what would be grounding them. But since then, with the support of the Ministry of Interior and key national government agencies, the regulations are now in place. But even though the regulations are in place, the industry is still not well prepared.
It's not as streamlined as we hoped it.
It's not well streamlined because you are still talking about the questions of compliance. You have a law in place, but you have an industry that has been there for a long time. So one of the key things we are talking about is compliance to the new regulations, so that those industries that were there before 2016, and many of them really, and the few industries that have since then been established around that time, can then begin a journey on working in the new compliance. And there are quite a number of areas that this is looking at. So those are part of the things we are talking about. We also talk about an industry that never had a training program that was validated by the government. So now we are aware that there is a training curriculum for basic training curriculum that has been, been approved by the government, that is beginning to work in the industry to help shape up, because, you know, you can never professionalize a sector without organizing it and without, doing capacity building and training that focuses on the key areas that the industry expected to work on.
Absolutely, and we'll be looking at some of those issues in depth as we get to just looking, understanding the challenges that we have been facing as a country when it comes to private security. But we have been mentioning this act that was established back in July 2016 that was that consequently led to the establishment of the Private Security Regulatory Authority. And maybe for the benefit of our viewers this morning to even understand where we're coming from when we talk about regulation having come into play back in 2016, maybe let me come to you, Cosmas, and you could help us understand some of the functions that fall under this Private Security Regulatory Authority.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. You know, after the Act was put in 2016, there are supposed to be so many other things that should follow in play. One of them is setting standards for the industry.
Yes.
Such that we have now a regulator who has set standards, coming up with the trainings, coming up with training curriculum.
Yes.
And I'm told, if you know, Jane, training for a security guard will require about 330 hours. That translates to about 45 days. With that, we need now to come up with good regulations.
Yes. Let
me say that part of these challenges that we are having are PISRA regulations. You remember in 2019, the regulations which had been brought were annulled by Parliament in 2019. That is to say, after the Act was brought into being in 2016, 2019, they were annulled by Parliament. And from 2019 up to today, we don't have new regulations. That is the biggest problem. If that one can be solved, you will see the industry being regulated. Alongside that, then we'll have other challenges like the minimum wage. You have heard Jacob talk about the minimum wage. There are so many things that we need to discuss about the minimum wage for the guards and other officers. There is also the issue of taxation, which is also a very big problem and a challenge in the industry. We need to talk about non-paying customers, and especially this time of COVID-19, there are so many people who are not getting to pay the security services. And if that one is not done, you can imagine the consequences in that. It goes down to the guard who is not paid.
Yes.
You remember we have been talking about unemployment, we are talking about insecurity in the country, and if these people are not paid, you can imagine what is happening.
Yeah.
Alongside that, we are also talking about the technology bill. We need to touch on that bill and have that one be done in the country, such that the computer and crime, cyber crime bill needs to be passed very, very quickly.
Yes.
Right now we are using Zoom, webinar, Skype, and all the others, other sort of technology.
Online platforms,
Yes. But remember, there are things and other problems associated with that.
Yeah, security risks.
That's why if you go to these M-Pesa kiosks, you are going to find so many of them crying because a lot of money has been stolen through M-Pesa. We don't have that bill alongside data protection. So there's a lot that requires to be done in this. I've just mentioned from PISRA regulations, and then we can go deeper into that.
All right, and I actually just want us to just dive into it. Let me start with you, Jacob. You know, some of the concerns that have been revolving for some time now, and let's just start with the regulation of these private security companies. You know, given the Act came into play in 2016, it found a state of self-governing companies, and with this this established regulation, it had to ensure that all the companies that fall within its bracket adhere to what it says. How are we doing in terms of regulating the private security companies? Is it still a big challenge? You find companies still want to run by their own books as opposed to adhering to the national standards as per the Constitution?
Thank you very much, Jane. And as Cosmas has alluded to, one of the most important assignments after the regulations was the national compliance exercise that was commissioned by the Ministry of Interior through the Private Security Regulatory Authority. So this was supposed to help the sector to understand, especially, we don't have accurate data, even in terms of the number of officially registered companies, in terms of their sizes, the number of security officers, not just guards alone. I know the guards are the main focus, but we are talking about the entire employment, sector of the private security industry.
Yes.
So the national compliance exercise, unfortunately commissioned by the authority through the CEO, but then because of COVID-19, we are told in March, just as it was picking up, the exercise has since then not been completed. Were it that the exercise was completed, then one of the most important things that we now have is accurate data in terms of the number of private security companies officially registered and operating in Kenya. So that is still a gray area. So that therefore presents a challenge, because yes, we know there are companies that are registered, there are companies that are compliant, but there are those companies that are not properly registered. So the government or whoever it is does not have a mechanism to regulate them. So that's one. Secondly, that for those that are regulated, you don't have a common standard of employment, arrangements. Companies have their own way of contracting the security officers, including the
And that
guards.
has been a problem?
And that is a big problem, because you have companies that probably have their own arrangements of employing the officers, especially the guards.
Yes.
But this is not complying very well with some of the labor laws that we have in this country. So there needs to be a way of harmonizing the labor laws, the existing labor laws, with the current situation in the industry. So that still is a bit of a challenge. If you go down straight to the guard who is most affected, because as Cosmas would tell you, this industry, the estimated figure of the employed officers are about 700,000. So we estimate as Usalama that probably around 500,000 of these are the security guards that you meet on the road or the streets. These are the guards that are now really deployed in front line. With the COVID situation, you have over 500 security guards deployed in hospitals, deployed in schools, deployed in banks, deployed in supermarkets. And these are the places where you have the highest number of interactions with the public every day. So we are talking about human rights and health-related issues that are not well taken care of. And remember, even the authority itself is not so sure about the numbers. So what happens to the protection, the health risk and health-related situations of the guards? And this is some of the conversations that we have had with the Cosmas and the entire industry, to begin to look at the kind of, not just now, preparedness since March last year. And with the new wave of COVID and the current situation, I think there needs to be a lot of national conversation to begin to help point out the challenges that we have, but more importantly, begin to address some of those key challenges. Remember our schools now, if you go to all the secondary schools, most of the primary schools, you will always find a security guard, either at the gate or just helping you with the directions into the school, into the offices. All government offices, I am aware, other than the few police officers that guard those premises, they are supplemented and supported by private security guards.
Now, still looking at those challenges about compliance and regulation, this also spills over to the training that is offered by the private security companies. As far as we know, almost each security company offers its own form of training. Could this also be a problem when it comes to having like national standards when it comes to how training is offered, and consequently even how the guards do perform and other all the employees in the private security sector? Let me come to you, Mutava.
Yes, Jane, I think that one boils down to the training. When it comes to the training, and we did mention that that is part of the PISRA regulations, we are supposed to harmonize the training such that each security firm is not going to be having their own training ground, their own training
curriculum,
personnel, TOTs, that is trainers of trainers. And with that, then we can now harmonize the training. We are supposed to have the curriculum done. And remember, before we have a curriculum, we are supposed to have public participation.
Absolutely.
This is why Parliament nullified the regulations. We need to have public participation. We talk about the institutions. The institutions are supposed to be accredited such that they undertake this duties of training. And again, when it comes to training, it starts with selection of the people to be trained. What level of education, how are they going to be trained, the curriculum, the duration, and even certification. Remember, in the peace regulations and the Act, we are supposed to come up with certificates, individual certificates, and also licenses for the security firms. How do you license a security firm unless they have met all the set standards? We need to do that. With the training, again, we start with the accredited institutions. We go to the TOTs. We go to the people to be trained. That's the guards. Nowadays, we don't call them guards. They are security officers because they are also undertaking other duties like secretarial and front office. Because of that, we need now to incorporate that security officers' curriculum into the training, such that when you now take them to KBC, like here, you find security officers at the front office. That way we are now going to move in the right direction.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the next aspect, and this is the costs and the finances that are involved in this entire process. Is this one of the challenges that we, as an industry, you could say is a big problem, because maybe the finances are not as accommodating, quote unquote, for the bigger part of the population that would want to partake in the security services?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jane. That is part of the challenge that we have. And indeed, in 2019, Usalama Reforms Forum did a baseline survey to understand the private security industry in Kenya. And one of the key issues that came up is the question of the cost of training. And
maybe you could break it down for us, just a general overview of what the numbers look like.
Yeah, the general overview of what the numbers look like, as Mutava said, is that we are estimated to have about close to 2,000 registered companies in Kenya, private security registered companies in Kenya, and other private security service providers. So you have registered companies. In addition to the companies, you have a few companies that are registered as service providers, for example. In this figure, you are talking about 15 to 20% of them are international companies incorporated in Kenya. So you have the Wells Fargos, the G4S, the fairly bigger companies that are incorporated in Kenya and well established. And most of them are, serious businesses, banks, other government installations and so on and so forth. But we have around 700,000 private security workers. That is what our baseline study established, though not very conclusive, but this is very indicative. So it's a sector that is employing a huge number of people. Remember, as I told you, we work in the police reforms, and the total number of police officers in Kenya, by the statistics of the National Police Service currently, is 105,000 members of the National Police Service, police officers. So you are talking about a huge number, 500,000 security guards that are supplementing the core functions of police officer. And back to your question again, so some of the key challenges that we realized was, of course, as Mutava has explained, was the question of training. At that time, the authority, the ministry, and the industry players had not agreed on the approach on training. Now we have nearly harmonized training curriculum, even though conversations are still ongoing to consolidate that approach. But what we realized, what the study established, was that for the private security industry, players who are the employers in this matter, or for the government in that case. Remember, as I said, the government recruits police officers and train them and deploy them. That is not the case in the private security sector. This is a function that is left to the private security, industry or the directors. So you have a question where training is seen as a cost and not as a basic, requirement. So you have private security industry struggling with the cost of training the security guards. In addition to the cost, you have challenges of as he said, where are the training colleges or the training centers? You have few accredited training centers that can run effective training programs for these people. So those are some of the challenges that we did see. But also not to forget to point out that the study also, did point out to the fact that there are also human rights violations in the sector.
Actually, I think that is some subject of such conversation that we'll be getting to in a bit. Issues to do with the rights of everyone in the security industry, because we have seen so many cases of disrespect, violation of rights, and even violence towards personnel in the security field. But before we get to that, we quickly want to switch over and have a listen-in to the press media briefing that is happening at the Hilton Hotel. This is in regards to the allowance and benefits policy for the public sector by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And speaking, we have John Monyoncho, who is the SRC Commissioner. Let's just listen in to it.
An outcome to see entrenched relative worth of jobs as determined by job evaluation. I'm not sure how many of you have been exposed to this job evaluation, but it can become an emotive issue, but it's one of the objective ways we can be able to determine where our jobs are, what grades they have, and therefore what kind of compensation structure or salary structure can be set for them. And therefore part of this process expects as an outcome to see that the relative worths have been determined and they are well set by the job evaluation that we actually are undertaking. Number 3, we expect as an outcome elimination of duplication, redundancy, disparities, and varied eligibility criteria. Allowances payable in the public sector is a mouthful, but it's all addressing the challenges that we have identified as a result of runaway pay or runaway allowances. And number 4, we see as an outcome embed the control mechanisms to ensure prudent management of financial resources as per the Constitution and as per the Public Finance Management Act of 2012. It's just in response to prudent financial management as an outcome. Number 5, we shall be able to have a clear purpose, scope, eligibility, criteria, and rate of payment of allowances. It will no longer be at the as the institution feels, but there will be what we call a very structured way of addressing the issue of payment of allowances across the public sector. And then finally, number 6, we should, or this policy expects to attain predictability in remuneration planning and management. It will help us to see what kind of costings will government have to pay in the next 2, 3, 4 years because of the predictability that has been established as a result of this policy. So what happens after we have received the comments and after we have heard from the public? It's a consolidation of feedback from stakeholders. We will do the consolidation feedback from the public. We'll put all the information together, and then of course we will finalize the policy before the new financial year, that is before June, and thereafter have it implemented within 6 months of its release. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, that is the press briefing that was happening at the Hilton Hotel here in Nairobi by the SRC, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, speaking on the allowances and benefits for the public sector. And the key take-home is that there will be a harmonized and structured way of these allowances, and especially in the public services. All this shall be harmonized and all will be operating under a structured way. And of course, also minimize disparities when it comes to the remuneration packages that are there. Be sure to stay tuned. You can always catch more of this as will be updated on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, getting back to this conversation here in studio, this is all about the private security sector here in our country. Looking at the progress you have made so far, from the regulation that was put in place back in 2016 to it also being distorted, and what more we need to do as a country to just ensure that private security services in our country are also streamlined and operating within the bounds of the Constitution. And helping us with this conversation this morning in studio, we have Cosmas Mutava, who is the chair of the Protective Security Industry Association, as well as Jacob Atiang, who is the programs manager working with Usalama Reforms Forum. Now, before we took that media briefing break, we were on the issue to do with human rights. And many a times we have seen incidents on social media and also mainstream media when it comes to violation of the rights of personnel, especially in the security sector. Let me start with you, Mutava. From what you have seen so far and understanding that measures need to be put in place to protect the security officers, what is the association doing to that end?
Thank you, Jen. I would like to, first of all, thank the boss from SRC for that good message.
Yes. I
have heard that message and I welcome it with that is required. What I'm saying is that when it comes to compliance and salary, we need to have public participation. For example, if you go to private sector, the regulations that we are using, the law that we are using is the General Wages Order of 1998. And that's why we are saying it needs to be harmonized.
Yeah.
There was an attempt to amend that one in 2003 and another one 2007. But up to today, we are using that. And because of that, that's why there is an outcry. I call upon SRC to reach to all the other stakeholders, our associations being one, so that we can now give out our programs and see whether it's workable.
Absolutely, and that media briefing is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, they're very good. I like that. That's why I'm saying I like the way they are doing it, because if you look at what we are having there is a basic pay for a guard, like in Nairobi, is 15,142 with an overtime of 8,000. NSSF 200 shillings. You calculate that one, it comes to a cost of around 34,008 shillings. Cost of one guard in Nairobi. And then you ask yourself, which institution pays that amount? You find it is not there. So that's why I'm saying with SRC, it is very important for us to move in that direction. Coming back to the regulations, we are also saying that we need to have public participation in all these other issues. You have seen guards and our people who are manning these institutions being assaulted, being battered, mistreated, and you find it is not right. Because this person is earning little salary, you can now go and abuse him in his place of work. You know, it does not hang well. It is very bad, and we condemn such acts, like the one that was in Meru, you saw the other day, that an officer was being battered by somebody just because he's just a security guard. We are saying we are condemning that act.
Yes.
The strongest words possible. It is not right according to human rights. Each person has got his own rights. Freedom of expression, freedom of movement, and even to work. why should we have a guard being battered or assaulted at his place of work? Of course, there is law that is supposed to take precedence and take that person to court or other places. But again, we are saying let's respect each other. Respect is diatrophic. We need to respect each other.
It's a two-way street.
Two-way street, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, before you get to continue, I want us to take a very quick breath, but we'll be right back to continue with this conversation about rights and more so looking at also the stereotypical nature that we have in the population, especially against women in the security sector. We will be addressing that in a bit, but do stay with us. We welcome your questions, comments, or clarifications that you may be needing in regards to this conversation. Talk to us using the hashtag #GoodMorningKenya at KBC Channel 1, and at Jane Boy is now you can be able to interact with us. We take a very quick breather. Stay with us.